Hey there, everybody. I hope you're having a good and sunny and warm day in your little corner of the world, and having a pretty good day in my corner of the world. I want to talk about something that somebody suggested recently, and that's about AI and my thoughts on AI, my opinions on AI, what I think AI is doing to our society, where I think it's going, what my opinions are on how AI is being integrated into society. Well, to be honest, I don't know if this person wanted to know all of these details that I've just outlined, but here goes. I think in the beginning, there was a lot of fear mongering around these AI chatbots. A lot of people, including myself, believed that these AI chatbots were a mind of their own and that they could think for themselves. At least that's what I thought. And I know a lot of people that thought the same thing. But as I read more on what AI is, I realized that AI is basically an advanced form of the internet that can spit out information in a conversational way, right? So AI wouldn't exist without the internet because it pulls all of the publicly available information that is out there from the internet. Every single article that has ever existed pulls it from the internet, and it generates an answer in a conversational form. So it's not thinking for itself, it's grabbing information from a cloud that already exists, a cloud that was also created by humans, and where humans input information, their research papers, their articles, the news, right? So it's grabbing information from the internet, and it wouldn't exist if it weren't for humans who teach it new codes and new ways of working, right, or of spitting out information. And it also wouldn't exist without the internet. Hence, if you ask AI anything that has recently happened in maybe the last week, it wouldn't be able to answer that because it's not pulling information. Last time I checked, it's pulling information from the internet from 2021 or 2022. So it doesn't have anything from 2023, 2024, 2025. This is, by the way, the last thing I read about ChatGPT or AI in general, that it was pulling information from 2022, 2023. This might have changed recently. Maybe it's become more advanced and it's getting information, it's pulling information real time. I don't know. But as of now, as of today, my understanding is that it doesn't get anything beyond 2021 or 2022. Anyway, with that being said, I do believe that there is this big threat because, it's a blessing and it's a curse. Just like the internet, a lot of people were afraid of the internet, right? A lot of people were afraid of electricity back when it was invented. A lot of people were afraid of cars back when they were invented, right? So there's always this fear when a new invention comes out because it can go to the furthest extreme and actually create a lot of harm and damage in society. And that is true for every invention, right? Electricity is a blessing to humans, but it's a curse to animals, nocturnal animals, or even like birds. It's when they're in their migratory phase, it's becoming harder and harder for them to navigate the world because they're being blinded by the night lights. So everything has its pros and its cons, and if it's taken to an extreme, it can cause detriment in one ecosystem or in multiple ecosystems. And that's what we have to look out for. Create things that have the least repercussions, or at least try and avoid them, or at least try and find a way around them so that there aren't that many repercussions. So anyway, AI is a blessing and it's also a curse, because it's a blessing because since it's pulling information from everything that's publicly available from 2021 or 2022, it's pulling all of that information in just a couple of seconds and spitting that information out. You don't have to go out there and research for hours and hours and hours for an answer, because the chatbot will spit out an answer in just a couple of seconds. However, there has been multiple occasions, and there's evidence out there that ChatGPT is not accurate, of course, because it doesn't have a mind for itself, so it's just grabbing information from everywhere. And depending on how you formulate your question, that will also depend on how it formulates its answer, right? So it doesn't have a mind of its own, because it doesn't really have a way to percolate what is true information and what is not, right? So that can be taken to an extreme, because people start over relying on AI as an extra appendage, and they stop using their critical thinking skills, and their critical thinking skills start to atrophy. I met this guy in New York, and about 2 or 3 years ago, and we met up again because he came down to California. He lives in Seattle and he works for Google. He's the manager of, what is it called, the Google version, Gemini? Yeah, he's the manager of Gemini. And it was interesting because I just saw him like a couple of months ago, and I was asking him what his opinion was on AI, and he had a very nihilistic, cynical opinion about AI. He said that basically in about 30 to 40 years from now, humans are going to become completely useless because AI is going to take over human functions and the human capabilities, so we won't be of any use. Only the people that own these machines and own this type of system will be the ones that benefit, because they'll be making more money. So, I mean, this is coming from a guy that works in that field. So, that was pretty depressing, to say the least. But I was telling him how I worry about the school kids nowadays, because ChatGPT, they're using ChatGPT for homework, I'm sure, and they're using all of these chatbots to answer their questions, and they're probably using it to cheat. Back in the day when I was taking tests, the internet was a threat and plagiarizing was a threat. If you read a research paper online and you just copied and pasted that and plastered it on your paper and presented it as yours, that would be considered plagiarism. But still, I feel like it was easy to tell plagiarism back then, because the professors would be very attuned to your voice, to your writer's voice. So if something sounded way too formal or different than your writer's voice, then it would be easy to spot. But nowadays, because these chatbots are becoming so conversational and so convincing in the way that they spit out information, it's becoming harder and harder and harder to tell what is AI generated and what is human generated. Because, I mean, I write poems, and nowadays I fear about my poetry being mistaken for ChatGPT, because I use descriptive language, and, well, I guess what saves me is the fact that I have a very unique way of writing my poetry, as in the form that I write the poetry, the way that the stanzas are lined up. It's more free form, whereas ChatGPT is more like indented, and it's a certain way. But it's becoming smarter and smarter, and one day we'll probably make poems out of free form, and it probably can do that if you give it that command. But anyway, it's destroying a lot of forms of art and a lot of forms of writing. It's destroying creativity, not because AI is bad, but because people become overly reliant on these systems. Just like people become overly reliant on the first 2 or 3 things that they see on social media and believe that it's true, right? Without fact checking. Or the internet. I mean, the internet is also a culprit, right? There's so many things out there that are just utter misinformation. And if you don't know how to fact check and parse your information, then you're just going to believe anything that pops up first, right? And usually the things that pop up first are the things that have been sponsored by somebody that has paid so that their website could pop up first, right? So anyway, I think it's a blessing because it makes things easier for us, just like the internet has made a lot of things easier. It facilitates certain tasks, but it also atrophies our critical thinking skills. And that was the argument that I made to this guy, the guy that works at Gemini. I was telling him, because he said to me, because I said to him, well, I worry about the school kids because when they grow up and they start becoming politicians or politically active, they're just going to be ChatGPT robots. Whatever they read on ChatGPT or whatever chatbot they're using, that's going to be their bias. And there's just going to be so much misinformation out there because people are going to believe the first thing that they read on ChatGPT without being able to do the actual work of researching the information and seeing if it's true or not. And so I was like, I worry about them because they're not really going to have any critical thinking skills and they're just going to be little robots. And it's going to be easier for these neoliberal capitalists to take control. I mean, that's an extreme perspective, but it's true. Like, it's easier to control a population that doesn't have any critical thinking skills. Like, you just use whatever algorithm is convincing to your population and tweak it a bit so that it can be palatable to the viewer, but it can sway what you believe without you even knowing it or being conscious of it. And you start losing your ability to think independently. And that was my argument. Because he said, well, I think ChatGPT and all of these chatbots such as Gemini and Grok, they are all going to be detrimental to the people that haven't developed those critical thinking skills, but they're going to be very beneficial to those that already have the critical thinking skills like you and me. And I said to him, no, I think that actually even people that have developed the critical thinking skills because they went to school and they did it the traditional way, right? The quote unquote traditional way, which isn't necessarily the best way to learn, but you did have to use your critical thinking skills. I mean, at least when I went to school. So I was taught how to use my critical thinking skills. I remember a lesson on that. And how to look for reputable sources online and things like that. So anyway, even though I've developed those critical thinking skills, and a lot of people that went to school the traditional, quote unquote, traditional way, have developed those skills, albeit maybe not everybody has developed them the same way, or depending where you went to school, or what you learned, it's different. But I think for the most part, most people still think for themselves, although that's changing because of the algorithm, I feel. So this has been an ongoing issue since social media became so money hungry, and it started using the algorithm to manipulate ideas and opinions. But anyway, my point is that I was arguing that I think that ChatGPT and all these chatbots will atrophy our critical thinking skills. The people that already have the critical thinking skills, their critical thinking skills will atrophy because we'll become overly reliant on these resources. And so